Welcome everyone, and Happy New Year first of all. Best wishes for this new year. And so today's webinar will be about the socio-economic impact tool that AFE-INNOVNET project worked on last year, sorry. And Rod today will be here to present the protocol tool, the draft version for the moment. So we expect and we hope that you will be there today to have a look and listen carefully to what he's going to explain, and have a good feedback to see how we can improve the tool. So Rod, the floor is yours.
No, thank you very much. First of all, can everybody hear? That sounds okay. Very good. So first of all, I'd like to thank you all for taking part in this webinar. And it's work that we've been doing with Willeke van Staltenen in TNO and also Maria Ferry in Pobienistar. It's a collaborative piece of work. It's very much work in progress at the moment. So our key goal here is really to get some feedback to see how we can improve it and to make it more relevant for you all. The overall webinar has two parts. The first bit will be me presenting the tool, and we can have a bit of a discussion on it. But we're also very lucky to be joined by Dr. Ashgar Zaidi from Southampton University. And Ashgar has been working on a related instrument called the Active Aging Index. And later on, Ashgar will present the index for about 10 minutes, and then I think we can have a conversation about the synergies and how best to see how they may be able to reinforce each other. So if you're happy enough, I'll get started with the overview of the tool. I suppose the way that I'd like to kind of come into the discussion is talk a little bit around how we framed it, and I suppose the conceptual underpinnings of the tool, links to some of the related work that we've referenced. There's an underpinning process that we'd like to describe around how one goes about doing a socioeconomic assessment for age-friendly environments, and then an exploration of some of the impacts that we think might want to be considered. We're conscious that the tool needs to use at a variety of scales from the regional down to the local and municipal, and we're exploring I suppose the different ways that it's allocated at the moment. So we can have a small discussion on our learning so far, and clearly one of the things we would hope is that maybe some of you might want to participate in trialing the tool at different scales when we finish. And then there's a particular challenge around how we monetize the valuations and the assessments and impacts that we're dealing with, so we can have a look at that and then have a wider discussion. I suppose the most current view of I suppose looking at the integration of social, environmental, and economic work at its very, very highest level is handled through things like the United Nations in things like the sustainable development, where we're looking at how we balance the environment, the economic, and the social models, and there's work going on at the moment in relation to the next range of Millennium Goals. And the model that we're looking at here is, I suppose, looking at it from the global level, and I think our challenge then is to bring it down to the regional and local. But essentially, we're looking at three areas around, I suppose, the environment, the planet, and we can think of that in relation to place, and regions, and the local natural and built environment, and issues around urban and rural. The social dimension is looking at issues around people, so it'll be the health and activity of our lives, how well informed we are, and how included we are. And the economic dimension is around prosperity and the extent to which we have an inclusive and transformative economy. And I suppose underpinning these are some key principles around dignity, justice, and partnership, and that leads into many of the the concepts that we need to look at, like life course and well-being and capabilities, and we've tried to draw many of these together into the model that we're dealing with. In particular, the piece of work that we're dealing with here is the one in the green box here, which is the protocol for socio-economic impact at local, regional, and national levels to support age-friendly environments. But the work isn't being done in isolation, and there's a key goal in aligning it and this work to reinforce the work that's being done in a parallel project, which is the WHO's Age-Friendly Environments in Europe project. And one of the key exercises that we have to go through both now and into the future is to ensure that they're mutually reinforcing in relation to the policies and guidelines coming forward from the WHO work. Both are sitting underneath the frame of the European Innovation Partnership on Active and Healthy Aging and the D4 Action Plan. And I suppose when we look at the three goals and the three areas that are there, where we there are the issues around the impact on the qualities of lives of older people, but we're also dealing with some of the challenges around more effective and efficient and sustainable services and resources. So both of those dimensions need to come into the model that we're looking at. In terms of some of the other influences that we've looked at, there are lots of other projects dealing with doing kind of community assessments and that. I suppose the work that we're looking at here is taking the position that the tool is there to help ex ante or a priori. So this is a tool to help people assess the possible impacts downstream in order to help guide investments and to promote and mobilize projects, rather than it being used as a follow-on evaluation tool for projects that have already been completed or in action. So it's that early piece that we're trying to deal with. The key things that I suppose we're trying to deal with is, first of all, is having a holistic framework. So that's around what's considered, the social, economic, and environmental dimensions, and the age-friendly environment domains. Who is considered in it? So I think inclusive and intergenerational across the life course. So it's a model of older people in a society for all, and therefore looking at the participation of all, and that. So it's not purely for older people. The where is a challenge for us, because the spatial hierarchy to some extent raises from continent to neighborhood, and that's going to have an effect on the kinds of data that we deal with, and then I suppose the timelines that are considered in relation to sort of short, medium, or long-term change and transformation. We see the tool being used in very much an iterative process, so it's not a linear process. We would see it being used in a way where the teams dealing with the work can go through multiple loops, converging from maybe overviews of a quick understanding of some of the issues and feasibility down to more detailed plans. And we look a little bit more at the kind of multiple entry points, because some work has already started in some places, and we would like it to become relevant to those that have got started. And we think the tool can also bridge implementation and bridge planning into implementation action plans, and become a springboard into evaluation and monitoring. And then I suppose finally a tool for continuous knowledge development and improvement processes going forward. I think as we go through it, we'll see that it's whilst we try to simplify it, it's still not simple, and it involves multiple stakeholders with lots of different views to be brought around the table, wide consultation, varying levels of data, and essentially a tool to support collaborative decision making going forward. The things that we're hoping to try and achieve, and certainly your feedback will be helpful in trying to steer us to make sure that we keep true to these, is to try and simplify it for use across different scales and stakeholders, and for different participant audiences, and I think that will be a challenge for us all the time, because of the mix of kinds of projects that are explored under age-friendly environments, and the different stakeholders that get involved. I think we needed to be flexible to adapt to a broad range of use cases and a broad range of strategies and policies and interventions going forward. I think time is going to be a very important dimension in relation to whether or not we're looking at projects and interventions that have either short, medium, or long-term goals, and we tend to sometimes get fixated on quick wins and projects that have very short time frames. And I think this is one where we need to understand that the timeline implications of some of the changes that we're dealing with. I think the next thing that we're keen on is also the idea of the extent to which the tool is used in specific age-friendly policies, or to proof whether or not more general purpose policies are proofed for age-friendly requirements. So I think it's applicable in settings of where we're dealing with specific strategies, but also to some extent tests that age is considered in other policies as well. And then, as I said before, responsive to the WHO developments. And I think sufficiently, while it needs to be simple, it needs to be sufficiently robust to be able to support comprehensive analysis. The process itself is actually quite simple and quite straightforward, and this has been gathered from, I suppose, reviewing a range of socioeconomic impact models that have been used in a range of domains. But we've simplified it down into five key steps. Stage one is really kind of identifying the problem and why are we doing the analysis. Stage two is getting further underneath it and understanding the nature of the proposals or policies that we're proposing. Stage three will deal with identifying where do we see those the likely impacts of that which we are proposing, and there's an exercise there in really comparing that and testing it against some kind of baseline. Stage four is looking at at interpreting the outcomes of our initial impact assessments. In many instances, we may be comparing several different alternatives or several different approaches or scenarios. So we use stage four to really evaluate whether or not we are confident in the results of our assessment, or whether or not we need to go back and fine-tune the proposal or look to more data and fine-tune the analysis. So there's a general loop going on between stages 2, 3, and 4 until we get an assessment where we're comfortable that it is robust enough, and then we can present it to our stakeholders. So that's a general model that we're proposing to work with. I think one of the things that bearing in mind that across Europe there are many different countries and regions and municipalities coming into the age-friendly environment sphere at the moment. I think the model can support multiple entry points. So I think it's possible to be able to start. We can start with a clean sheet for a municipality or a region who's starting here, to identify the problems and start at stage one. Several places will already have identified the problems and may indeed have identified some of the key strategies in stage two. So the tool can then maybe come in at the stage 3 level of starting to tease out what are some of the impacts of those strategies and move forward. So I think the tool is flexible enough to be able to come into this at several entry points. And I think the other element that I think it's important for us is that stage 5 and the preparation of results and I suppose the stakeholder statement of the impact provides a launching point for implementation plans, and to actually bring the changes into action, and then being able to support ongoing stages of monitoring and evaluation. So I think the impact assessment process and its deliverables is a very, very valuable bridge between the planning, the implementation, and the feedback and evaluation. And I think our key would be to have a tool that is able to be dynamic in that process. To go through the stages in a little bit more detail, and I suppose this is probably where the comments and the document, the next layer of detail that we're hearing, or that's on these slides. We have to keep it open enough because of the different scales and the different natures of projects that are being explored. But I think essentially there are two key things that we're trying to do in terms of setting out the aims. One is identifying the core problem that is the focus of an age-friendly environment socioeconomic assessment. It may be as large as an overall regional strategy. It may be as focused as a municipal housing scheme, as a home adaptation program. It may be a new home support and care program, which is predominantly social and human resource rather than environmental. So we need to kind of tease out what's the extent and the challenge that one is trying to address. What are the who and what are the key affected targets in the population? Is the intervention focused purely at older people, or is it cross generational, looking at others? Either in the adult population or younger as well. And to understand, I suppose, what are some of the key trends and drivers and causes that are sitting underneath the problem. I suppose the second thing that one is trying to identify at the early stage of problem identification is what are our key objectives, and can we lay them out in a way that we can get some level of kind of hierarchical understanding in terms of their level of generality, their level of specificity, and the extent to which they may be operational. I think at this stage there's also a piece of work that's done, which is really understanding, are the objectives and our problems, are they related to any other policies in the locality, or in the municipality or in the region, and to ensure that our work is coherent and aligned with those. So they would be the kinds of work that would get undertaken at the first stage. The second stage is I've identified kind of four key areas where work would get done here. They don't necessarily need to be done in this order, and in fact, it's probably quite a bit of iteration through them. So that's a case of organising the work, planning the way we're going to do it, setting up the team, and determining the initial data gathering and consultation approaches. In most impact assessments, there's a real requirement to review, I suppose, what's the current situation or the current scenario, or the baseline, because our impact is really the variation and the deviation from that baseline in terms of how we're looking at things going forward. I think we need to be clear around the boundaries of the project in relation to its spatial reach, its time horizons, and its stakeholder ambitions. And this can be more challenging where in many age-friendly environment projects you have multiple stakeholders, so there may be slightly different ambitions between people responsible for housing and environment and people responsible for services and care. And then I suppose the next stage, I suppose the key piece coming out of this, is exploring what are our future scenarios, what are the kinds of options that we're trying to explore, what are the cross links between them, and I suppose in some instances filtering some of these so that we can focus on a small number of interventions or scenarios that are the basis of our work going forward. The impact exercise is again, it was also iterative internally. It's the key piece, and we come on to it a little bit further down, is trying to identify what are the key areas of impact that directly and indirectly affect social, economic, and environmental outcomes. And really, what we'll be doing here is laying out a menu of places to go and look for impacts, and then allowing the users of the tool to target in and identify their own local sources. And I think so it's a combination of both impacts and the identity and of who is affected in what ways. I think the value of it being iterative is that there is it's flowing through these scales because we may need to go back and get more data as and when we need it. So I think there will be some initial data coming forward from the earlier stages, but the impact assessment exercise itself may need us to go off and get additional qualifying data, and possibly opportunities for data from other checklists. And if there's possibilities for sophistication, there may be models and simulators that can generate data as well. I think we're not there yet at some of these stages in this area, but I think there will be opportunities to develop there. There's then assessing the impacts against the baseline, both qualitatively and quantitatively, and in some instances monetizing the cost benefits, and we can come back to explore what are some of the challenges there. In many instances, when we introduce an innovation or a new scenario or a new model, there is an additional administrative burden on the putting some infrastructure together to be able to bring the project to fruition and to be able to keep it and sustain it. So I think we need to also be able to identify what are some of the program and administrative costs associated with the intervention going forward, and some of those may be long term, or they may be intermediary, in that sense that maybe some administrative function needs to come into play for a 3 to 5 year period to support it. And then finally, I suppose we're dealing with levels of uncertainty in relation to both the data and our plan. So we need to assess issues around the risks and uncertainties to understand some of the sensitivity to some of the assumptions that we may have made in the model. So that there's a key area there of trying to make things make things explicit. The interpretive area is very much around, I suppose, weighing up the impacts, doing comparisons across the options, and trying to be clear around, I suppose, really introducing transparency. And I think this is probably one of the key things that underpins this exercise, is that because we're dealing with different different stakeholders with different levels of different levels of interest in different disciplines. People sometimes bring their own assumptions and their own underpinnings to the table. So the exercise of making things more transparent is a key goal in being able to kind of bridge the conversation between stakeholders that may be coming from different instruments. The second area in terms of interpretation conclusion is to understand the distributional effects. It may be that our intervention is affecting different socio-economic groups in different ways. They may be influencing younger old or older old. They may be influencing older people in the workforce rather than older people at the boundary of care. So it's understood we have to look at the distributional effects to see who are most affected by our impacts, and to see how they affect different groups. Those distributional effects may be split socially. They may be split geographically. So, for example, a rural transport program may be more focused on linking people in the rural hinterland and being able to bring them into urban populations. So the direct influence is those rural people, but obviously there's a trade gain for people in the cities where people are brought in. So it's understanding and highlighting some of those. And then I suppose really undergoing the uncertainty analysis and identifying where, if we have some assumptions underpinning our proposals, how sensitive are they? If a value changes, does it change the outcome? And overall, I suppose we're seeing it here at this stage. Is the conclusions robust? And if not, then we need to go back in and try and find other and additional data sources to strengthen a second iteration. And then I suppose finally the end result is the development of I suppose the impact assessment document, which would be largely a report with outlining its aims and objectives, the analysis, the comparisons, and the conclusions. I think the key area here is understanding who the final document is targeted to. Is it other stakeholders in relation to decision making, or is it to the public in relation to greater participation? So there are some interesting areas there. And then I think finally, a checklist or some form of review to see, has the overall exercise been completed in relation to effectiveness and coherence and quality. So that's the overall process that we're proposing. I suppose we come into it, I'd say, with different levels of intensity from different starting points. So I suppose the next thing I'd like to do is maybe explore a little bit around what are some of the possible impacts that we might like to go and explore and take it from there. So I suppose the key things are, first of all, impacts can be they can be positive or negative or neutral. So you can see there the highlights there in that. The second thing is, I suppose, impacts can either be very, very strongly and very, very directly related to the proposition. They may have a strong, meaningful one in terms of affection, or they may be indirect. And I think we need to understand, because in many instances, and you'll see the model as we go a little bit further, the challenge that we're dealing with is that everything is connected and everything is interrelated, and it's understanding and tracing our way through some of these things is very important. So so one of the things we'll be looking at is the impact, intensity, and variability of the impacts. The second thing is I suppose trying to get an overall menu of relevant impacts that we might want to consider. And in this case, I suppose the way that we've approached this is coming from the high level to the to the smaller. So this is an overall landscape of impacts that are looked at the EC level when doing larger socioeconomic environmental impacts in many domains. So you'll see them broken up into three areas of social, environmental, and economic. The issues around, I won't go through them all, but things like labor market, living conditions, health, issues around privacy, governance on the social side. On the economic side, issues around the market, trade flows, operating environment for small and medium businesses, the administrative burden on businesses, and then on the environmental side, things like climate and air quality, land use of resources, and that. I suppose if we're looking at indirect impacts, we have to at least consider some of these for some of our projects, even if we simply say they're not an impact that we need to worry about and set them to zero. But I think there's a value in having them in our menu to be able to as a checklist. I think at the highest level, it is possible to take an older person's perspective on the social and economic dimensions in relation to data. The environment tends to be delivered to us in a much more neutral way, as being something that is there either intrinsically or instrumentally to us all. So it's really there as a resource to be able to support us. But in this particular model, I think it's worth highlighting that the built environment and the urban and rural mix is a little weak in some of our European assessments, and I think that's one of the areas that the work that we do will need to be strengthened. So what we've done is really try and synthesize a range of indicator models and that into this triangle. I'm afraid it's very complex, so I'm going to take just a little bit of time to explain it. But if I see if I can get my arrow here and do this. So it's built into the three dimensions there of environmental, social, and economic. But I suppose there are two different thoughts in terms of where we're looking at data here. the drive from the bottom right hand corner, which is the social dimension. We've used work from the capabilities approach and the work of Amartya Sen and Martin Nussbaum as a framing of how we might look at measures of well-being. There's a lot of take-up and a lot of attraction for that capabilities approach. So the measures that are in the white areas are coming from that perspective, and they're kind of framed in the way of being able to do this. You're being able to live longer, being able to live better. So their impacts on the individual and impacts on groups. From the other direction, I suppose from the economic and the environmental direction, we're coming at more from a resource model, where our challenge is more around resource effectiveness and how better can we organise services, how better can we organise transport. And I think this is appropriate for the innovation partnership model, because the three goals that our innovation partnership has set is around quality of life and health for individuals, effectiveness and sustainability of system services and care, and improvement in economic and jobs. So I think integrating both a kind of a well-being perspective and a resource perspective, I think, is appropriate to us, but I think it can be challenging. But you'll the model is quite complex. So I think, but I think our way of dealing with it is at this level, starting to ask some of the questions around, how does any of our interventions affect any of these variables, and then filling it out. We do need to go a layer deeper. So you'll see here. Well, first of all, this next slide is aligning it more specifically with some of the themes that we see coming through the World Health Organization's age-friendly domains. So the green areas are more directly familiar to some of you who are dealing with those domains directly, but I think the others are very supportive. So I suppose what we've been looking at is can we get a menu of impacts that are addressing this set of interconnectivity. And I suppose it's worth highlighting that model is complex enough. I'm scared to say that actually there are another layer of complexity underneath it, which is that when we look at something like health and longevity, there are some measures and things that we can look at the high level, like life expectancy and healthy life expectancy and age dependency. But we may want to get further down underneath issues around the distribution of causes of death, chronic diseases, places of death, accidents and injuries, levels of physical activity, issues around nutrition and mental well-being. So these are gateways into additional levels of data and additional levels of information that may or may not be relevant to our projects. So obviously, if we're doing an urban design project that is going to be introducing parks and walkways and that, it's opening up opportunities for physical activity and physical health. So we need to be looking at those ones there. There's the area of safety. So I'm not going to dwell on these. You've got the documents to be able to go through them. Employment opportunities, standards of living. I suppose that's one of the areas where I think we got a question coming in there around health inequalities, and we can start looking at some of the issues around poverty and deprivation and some of the different distributional aspects there. Issues around learning. So there's a menu there for us to look at on the social side. There's a menu here in relation to the economic side, in relation to issues around, I suppose, prosperity and the extent to which there may be disparity there, and that affects issues around employment, the investment flows and whether products and services are happening across the border, across boundaries, and is this affecting migration and that. the big area here around public service budgets and the impact of costs and the effect on costs for in things like hospitals and community services and older people services, service quality in relation to the extent of which they're becoming more person-centred. And I suppose one of the big challenges, and I suppose one of the key things here, is the extent to which budgets may need to be readjusted and shared and pooled because our interventions are spanning multiple agencies and multiple budget holders. Are we having any effect on market mechanisms? Are we promoting more research and development? Different projects and different proposals will be tackling these in different ways, and I think it's important to be able to highlight them. I don't want to shy off. Some of our projects and some of our proposals may have issues around property rights and issues around home ownership and changing some of our rights issues in that, particularly if we're moving home and moving into a nursing home where things are a little bit uncertain. So there are issues to consider there. And then finally, the range of environmental impacts, ranging from the natural environment, culture and heritage, land use, settlement, housing, and transport. I mean, I think we're familiar with all of these, but it's really to have a checklist to be able to see are our projects impacting there. I suppose just bringing them forward, we haven't gone into any great detail in any particular exemplars right now, but it's largely a case of trying to have a discussion with those undertaking the analysis to see what are the advantages and the disadvantages of the proposal. Are some of these impacts relevant? Are they not? And what way are they moving? And to some extent, I think in many instances we may well be comparing several scenarios against a baseline. I think when we add them up and we aggregate them, I think one of the things that we need to be wary of is that in this particular model we haven't weighed any particular impact to say that this is more important than the other. That's probably something that would get done in a practical implementation. I suppose the second side of it then is the distributional effects and understanding, do these impacts affect different groups in different ways, and are they geographic or are they population based? I suppose we've been doing some kind of dry runs around what are the likely variations between this kind of tool being used at a regional level as opposed to a local level, we've more work to do on this one, and I think this would be much more valid if we can get some municipalities and regions to maybe trial the tool and to get some feedback in relation to how it might work. So this is more a view of what we're thinking of. But doing these exercises, first of all, they're very built around the teams. So there are characteristics of the teams, and the leadership of the teams will influence them very much. And is it a territorial team or is it a local team? The data sources, and I can see some comments coming through here, are obviously critical. And I think the higher order, the spatial level, the more we tend to lean towards aggregating national and higher level regional data sources. As we get closer to local projects, there tends to be a higher tendency to collect new local data that's more specific to more local objectives. So there is a data gathering issue there. There are issues around, at the larger scale, I suppose consultation is likely to be more through workshop. At the local level, it may be more participative and more kind of co-design oriented. I think there will be more opportunities in more local ones to do more iterations through these kinds of projects, these kinds of work, as opposed to maybe more formal ones. So there are, I think there are different ranges here. We're going to come on to the monetization aspect here in a moment here, but I suppose there are issues. I suppose at the higher level regional ones we're looking at maybe broader assumptions and longer time frames, whereas at the local level we may be needing to get down into more detailed costs and the accruals of more detailed benefits. Issues around who the audiences are will be there in terms of, are we presenting to the public more so than partners? And then I think at more regional and city level, there's probably a stronger culture for evaluation and monitoring, and that's probably more institutionalized. At the smaller community level, it may be more challenging to get that kind of cross-agency sharing of to deal with. So I think there are some of the pieces that we're looking at. I suppose that the next piece is dealing with the monetizing work, and I suppose this is where it's both challenging and in some cases both politically, economically, or philosophically different. But I suppose if we lay it out, I suppose the key things in relation to setting out the projects is, first of all, I suppose, understanding what are the time implications of a policy intervention. Are we looking at something over 3 years or 5 years, or is there assumption that our change is going to last forever and that we're dealing with a longer element? I think then when we're starting to explore the cost components, there are costs associated with setting up change processes and setting up teams and setting up processes. Things may be done in terms of phasing things in and build up phases. The ongoing duration of the program. Some projects may have explicit close down, replacement, or depreciation components that need to be built in, particularly if they're capital intensive and there's a capital wear down, because we need to look at depreciation in order to fund maintenance and that. So the two boxes in the middle, I suppose, are the costs and the gains. I suppose we're laying them out there in relation to once off costs, annual programmatic and operational costs associated with services or supports and maintenance and monitoring. And I suppose in here the critical one would be the annual cost of funds that are certainly if they're coming through taxation or public sector funds, how that's done, and then the specific costs associated with the administrative burden. So trying to get some sense of costs and laying them out over a period. The gains, I think, first of all, I think we need to be careful that the gains are regarded as being incremental to the baseline, as opposed to being completely new. I think we have to be careful about that. We can look at direct market gains, and we can look at indirect market gains and revenues. The piece that I suppose we're going to come to, and we can have the conversation around how much work we need to put into this in the document, and how much we need to do within the project itself in relation to practices and experience, is the very, very thorny value of valuing non-market goods. I'm hoping that later on in our conversation, Ashgar might be able to help contribute to some of this. But when we're dealing with non-market goods, but we're dealing them we're trying to get a monetized framework, we have the tricky task of trying to convert something into a monetary value, that we may at some levels theoretically object to, but there are I suppose three things that we need, that there are three tools there that we can look to, and maybe we need to explore a little bit more in the document. We were certainly planning on putting this into the appendices in terms of how we want to work with them, but one is a willingness to accept. So I suppose we're in the world of trading something for something else, and the question is, what are we prepared to accept? What are we prepared to pay? So that's a willingness to pay, and there are tools and mechanisms to be able to tease these out. And then I suppose the last one is this concept of quality adjusted life years, and how do we put a value on a good life year? There are tools and economists live with these measures, and certainly health economists do. I think there are many applications of this tool where we don't necessarily need to quantify that some of these works can be done qualitatively. Where we do need to quantify, some of them can be done without having to deal with making judgments around quality of life. If we're comparing a home-based support model with a long-term care model, in some instances you can simply deal with all of the direct costs and benefits without having to, and it stands up regardless of whether or not we have to assess the costs associated with extended quality of life. The last two pieces, I suppose, and these are for the more professional ones, is additional elements that we need to bring in. One is accounting for risks and uncertainty, and then the other one is some of the financial tools around. Certainly, when we're looking at money into the future, things like net present value or public sector discount rates, which are mechanisms to, I suppose, bring the money back into and bring the numbers back into a common framework so that we can make comparative judgments. So I suppose that's where we've got to with the state of the tool so far, and I suppose that the we're certainly very open to having the conversation now before we pass over to Ashgar to go into the active aging index. But so I put some questions up here for I suppose which we're seeing from our own side, but many of you may have others, and I don't know New whether or not you want to modulate a questions and answers phase here, but I suppose some of the questions we got, how do people feel about the overall approach? The general menu of impact areas, is it too rich, or does it need to be rich in the first instance? Some of the issues around being open to allow some of the actual measures to be local to local territories. I think we have lots of opportunities to be able to tie some of this into some of the work that the AAI are doing, certainly at the regional level, which is at the larger scale work. Are the group looking to have some more worked examples, and could we do some worked examples with the network and with members to try and have some exemplars in here? And I suppose, how much work would people like to have on the monetization side, and some exemplars of how how we can deal with things like willingness to pay or quality of life. So I'm going to leave it out and open it up to discussion, if that's all right. Thank you very much. Is there anyone there?
Hi, Rod. Sorry. Thank you very much. Well, I think there was only one big question regarding the money aspect of how data should be collected and who should be doing that. But I don't think there were other remarks regarding the tool in general. Maybe we could come back to the question after Ashgar's presentation.
Very good. Yeah.
Okay for you, Ashgar, if you're ready.
Yes, I'm ready.
Start your presentation. We are running a bit
very brief, and let me thanking Rod to present this very rich and complex framework. My view is that at the stage of formulation of issues and concepts, it's a welcome thing that you are making it as complex as possible, or as required, and thus you are bringing in lots of issues which one should take into account at this stage, and at the implementation stage, then one could see how many complexities could actually be possible, given the lack of data and given lack of resources. What I would be presenting is a very different, in a way very different, but also very related. Different in the sense that it is a national level tool. So it measures active aging at the very national level, and it is a tool to monitor at the national level the experiences and potential of active aging of older people. But at the same time, the tool was developed in a manner that it can be, the framework can be used to provide the same tool at the regional and at the local level. So that's where active aging index work links nicely with the work of AFE-INNOVNET. Let me very quickly, I would like to take just 5-6 minutes and run through some of the basic ideas, and so that we could come back to how the two projects could learn from each other. What are the synergies? So moving on very quickly, I had idea that I would give you some broad introduction of the Active Aging Index project, which started during 2012. It was commissioned by the European Commission with the help of UNECE in Geneva. It was very importantly was advised by a group of experts, which not only included policymakers at the national level, but at the European level, and also representatives of older people. Age Platform has been the major partner, and Sophie Parent was amongst the experts. It was, to start with, developed to provide the tool at the national level, but at this moment we have seen very important application of this tool, the Active Aging Index, at the regional level in Poland, and at local level in other countries, Spain and Italy. Once I have given you very quickly some broad objectives of the index, I want to present the results, because often looking at the results gives you a good sense of how useful this tool is. Then I move on to the last point, which is, given the fact that now we have data for 3 years for this tool, 2008, 2010, and 2012, we have now started to analyze the trends in active aging across 28 European Union countries. Thus, it has started to provide us a sense of how countries are, what trend countries have experienced, especially during a period which was a period of volatility. There was a financial crisis during 2008, 2009, 2010, and then there was recovery, which led to. So during this period, if we are observing some positive changes, then those positive changes should be looked at to be robust, given the volatility. So hold on to your seats. I'll go through these slides very quickly. The broad objective of the Active Aging Index project has been to produce a high quality and independent evidence base on active aging, because around 2012, which was the European Year for Active Aging and Solidarity Between Generations, we came across lack of comparable, credible evidence on active and healthy aging across European countries. So this was something to produce that evidence during that year. Then we also want to draw unique insights on the basis of comparative analysis of EU countries. So we wanted to come up with a tool which could make comparison across 28 EU countries, so that countries could learn from each other's experiences. And in the process, we had aimed to develop and promote a quantitative measure so that we could indicate the untapped potential of older people. This is going in the line of thinking about positive paradigms of aging, in which we see that greater share of older people in the society is not necessarily a problem, but it's actually an opportunity. We need to understand where there are untapped potentials and how policies could go on to tap that potential. This is the framework within which Active Aging Index has been measured, and this single picture can tell you almost everything you need to know about Active Aging Index. To start with, you look at that there are 22 different indicators, and these indicators are then aggregated into 4 different domains or dimensions. To start with, employment has been an important dimension of active aging. Then participation in society, engagement of older people. These are non-market activities. And then the third domain is about independent, healthy, and secure living, which includes all kinds of different indicators, but you would notice that financial security, issues about poverty and inequality of older people is part of the indicators on that aspect is part of this domain. Then we go on to provide some novelty in this kind of measurement and add a fourth dimension, which is about capacity and enabling environment for active aging. Because it's only fair to understand this dimension as well before we start comparing countries across EU bloc. In this, we have life expectancy, healthy life expectancy, as well as mental health and social connected and educational capital of older people. You would see that broadly this could be divided into actual experiences of active aging, which are the first three dimensions, and capacity to actively age, which is the capability aspect. Before I go on to present the results very quickly, let me emphasize that the framework is such that we aggregate these 22 indicators to domain-specific index. So we will have an employment index, we will have participation in society index, and then these four indices are then aggregated to a single index. You could see this is there is a great advantage of having a single number to compare countries, but it doesn't have to be that one just looks at that single number. The richness of the tool is that there are 22 different indicators to give you a sense of where one country is doing in comparison to other. And when you compare countries, you could see that countries might do well in employment, but not so well in other aspects. And there might be other countries which may not have been showing to be doing very well in terms of older persons' employment, but they do very well in other respects. So the countries, through this kind of analysis, could learn from each other. And here comes the exciting part. Before I do that, let me just mention that we have been using data sets that are developed at the European level. So this is as good as it can get at the current stage. And now comes the exciting part of looking at the results. And here are the results, 28 EU countries put in a single graph. On the left side, you see that the Nordic countries, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, are right at the top, but also Netherlands, UK, and Ireland are good performing countries with respect to active aging. The critical bit here is that even the top ranked countries barely pass the 40 point mark. And if we were to think about this, that shows that actually even the best performing countries have a lot of untapped potential to deal with. I go very quickly through these results, and then we should have time for questions. Greece and the majority of Central and Eastern European countries are right at the bottom, and that means there is much more policy efforts required to untap the potential of older people in those countries. What surprised us most is the gender difference. In majority of the countries, women fare worse than men, especially in the Mediterranean, Southern European countries. Now, we also looked at the trends. The three data points tell us that Sweden, Denmark, and Finland remain at the top, and so is Netherlands and the UK. Whilst most of the Central European countries, with the important exception of Czech Republic, are right at the bottom. We observe small rise in the index score, which is good news that despite all the volatility of this time period, we observe some positive change. So countries are moving in the right direction, with the exception of Greece and Cyprus, for example. The overall strength of this tool is it's a transparent numerical exercise. It provides good, solid analysis at the national level, but now we have started to use the analytical framework to break it down to regional and local analysis. And that's where this tool connects nicely with the work they're doing in your project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashgar. So as you can see, that's his email address if you have questions about the active aging index. So now we would be very very interested to see how we could possibly link the two tools to improve communities towards an age-friendly environment. People, if you have questions about both presentations, write them down. I remind you that the session is recorded and will be uploaded on the website. The PowerPoints will also be sent and put on the private part of the website. You will have until end of January to give your comments, so we could integrate them to the final version of the tool, the protocol about the socio-economic impact assessment tool. We'll come back to the question mentioned during his presentation. Just give me a second. Rod, if you want to moderate the discussion now, go ahead.
Yes, I mean following on and listening to Askar's presentation, you know, there's, I think, quite a lot of both synergies and alignments with the AAI and the work we're doing, particularly as Askar was indicating that the AAI is now moving down to explore its applicability at the regional and local level. So I think, you know, when we start to deal with some of those more disaggregated data sources, things will become much easier, and I think there will be a you know, huge opportunity to develop. I think what's also interesting is the extent to which some information is used to plan policies, and whereas AAI is capturing the impact of change, and you know, it's interesting to see now over the period between 2010 and 2012, you know, the beginnings of some trends. And I was with him in Poland when they were exploring the regional piece, and it was interesting that Ireland was third on the list in 2010, but it's down to 6 in 2012. You know, and that provides a pointer to try and understand where are they, you know, what's happening that level is changing. So I think there's I think there's a lot of opportunity to be able to deal with that. You know, I see the dialogue is probably more, you know, it may be a case that people, there was a lot that we went through, so people may prefer to reflect on the presentation and come back with feedback at the towards the end of the month, rather than moving directly into a discussion here. I suppose one of the things that would be fine is if anybody felt that they had a particular problem with the approach that we're taking. I think that would be something for us to try and get an understanding of now, so that we can identify it early. My sense is that it's more around fine tuning and bringing in some more exemplars, and maybe teasing out a little bit more around how the monetization might work. And that's certainly stuff that I think we could take on board. But if anybody has any burning issues with the topics that are there, they could highlight it now.
Is that okay? Is that okay?
Can
Do you hear me?
Use one? Yes. Can I use one or 2 minutes to respond to the question that Anne-Sophie put? The discussion in Krakow, where we had representatives from close to 10 member states, the policymakers, high-level policymakers. The discussion was focused on how the Active Aging Index tool could actually be broken down, could actually be constructed at the subnational level, to regional level to start with, but then very many participants showed interest in bringing it down to the local level, because some of the policy making is done at that level in those member states. It was actually, the tool was taken very positively, that can be broken down, subdivided into regional level. The challenge, and that's also coming through from questions, that some countries were very rich in data at the local regional level. Thus, they did not see much problem, whereas other countries had had issues with data availability. So countries, depending upon what data they have, they could start the process, and learning from similar exercises from other member states could actually, over the long term, plan to construct databases to provide data at the local regional level. So it was, despite the fact that some countries were really struggling with the data availability, they saw this as a positive process that some member states could go ahead with this kind of tool development at the local level, which could give them a sense of the impact of policies, not just impact of the policies after policies have been implemented, but also a sort of sense a priori, ex ante, a sense of what impact could be expected from policies. So it was seen in a very positive term that this kind of tools be developed at the local level. So this AFE-INNOVNET project and the work that Rod is doing in developing this tool would be a very welcome tool from the point of view of many.
This is Sophie. Can you speak now? Yes. I have two questions. One for Rod. Would you be able to send examples of existing models of the socioeconomic impact assessments? They may not cover all the areas that you have presented in your very rich presentation, but just to help people understand how this can work concretely. And the same question actually for Asghar. You mentioned in your presentation also that the active aging index is used already at local and regional level in some parts of the EU. If we could also build some easy to understand but clear examples of how it's already done, and this would inspire, I think, many others to believe in the added value of using this, the two instruments actually, and build a close link between the two. Because we will need to convince all the stakeholders we want to, who are involved in the IFA thematic network, and then later on in the broader movement of the covenant, that it's worth the effort to use those tools. That's the only way we can really make informed decisions and involve all the stakeholders, because they will understand exactly what are the plans, how this will have an impact, what kind of cost impact it will have for whom, and what are the return on the investment that will be made.
Yeah, certainly. I think, we will try and draw in and not only reference, but maybe just include in the document several exemplars of where people have been doing socioeconomic impact assessments. They may not always be as absolutely clear as in our domain, but to give people exemplars, I think will be helpful. So we will certainly do that. If there are any regional partners or members in our network, either online here or that, I know Maria and Villika and myself have been trying to see whether or not there are any in our ecosystem currently doing any impact assessment work that would be worth bringing in and referencing. And or any that might like to trial applying the tool as it is in their context, so that we could test out its applicability and see some of the challenges around I suppose the balance of keeping it sufficiently complex for it to be robust, but also ways of being able to simplify it at the implementation level so that it's not too onerous. It was reviewed by Joan Martin at Louth County Council last week, and certainly her comment was, because they would do economic assessments in many other areas and domains, is the problem that the effort to apply the tool can become onerous. So the extent to which we allow it to be iterative, so that the confidence can build, I think will be important. But But certainly, and as I know, certainly Ashgar and I are going to hope to get together shortly to see how we might be able to talk about better alignment of these pieces going forward.
Absolutely, I agree with Ansel Paran that we should be able to provide more details of the work that is happening in extending the active aging index framework to regional level and to local level. We have 3 examples already. I was hoping that Sergio may be able to present the work that he's doing, but apparently not. So, but certainly we can provide that information either in writing to be added to this, the output of this webinar, or through other means.
If I could also just pick up on the that I see that Maria is highlighting. Both Maria and Willika have been doing a lot of work on aligning this generic tool into how it might be used in both a regional and a local scope. I mean, we only had time just to highlight some of the possible impacts of that, but those 2 exemplars will form a major part of the tool in relation to helping people take it on.
And I think if we have more questions for the regional and local level, we can maybe open a blog on the website so people can ask their question and we can discuss that more further. I have another person, Caroline. I'll give you the floor to ask your question. Just make sure that your microphone is on. And Mrs. Costance.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yes. Hello. Yes, so thanks a lot for the very good presentations and for the very good tool. And I was wondering why you don't include environment in your the name of the tool, because you talk about socio-economic impact assessment, but as you are including clearly a third environmental component, it may be better to reconsider the name to be as comprehensive as you try to be in your tool. My second issue is that I indeed have seen that you are also looking at distributional impacts, and I think it's important to indeed look into health inequalities and see how impacts are across the groups from different socioeconomic backgrounds. And then 2 practical questions. One is when you think the tool will be available and when it will be put online. And I assume it will be an online tool, because I'm sure that member agencies of EuroHealthNet are interested to further work with the tool and see what they can do with it. So a few comments and a few practical questions.
The environmental dimension. In terms of the name, I think there's a little bit of echo here. Is that okay? At the moment, the code is AFE-SEIA, so the environment is in the age-friendly environment element of it. But I'm sure we can add it into the acronym and get a more holistic name for it. So we can certainly deal with that. Health inequalities, I think we do address and support the distributional pieces. I'm not exactly sure of our final timelines, but I think certainly over the next I don't know, but Maria might know when we submit. I think it'll be completed in the next 8 weeks to be available online. I think that's the time frame. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so the tool will be available around February, but we're still waiting for your comments before finalizing the tool, and would like to see if we could implement it at the local and regional level to see how it works, if we can improve it and make it even perfect if it's possible. But I think our speakers have to leave for other commitments. And if you have questions, if you have comments, don't hesitate to send that to us by email, and we'll open a blog on the website in the private part, so to continue this discussion. But thank you very much, Rod and Ashka, for being here today. And you're welcome. And we'll see each other very soon for the Active Aging and next meeting in April, I guess, in April. And we'll continue the discussion online then. Thank you very much, everyone.